everyone, it's Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my September wrap-up, so I'm going to be sharing with you every single book that I have read this month. I'll let you know my rating on it and just my thoughts. So, as usual, this is the pile of books that I've read this month, so I'm going to go through them as quickly as I can because I have read a lot of books. I believe I've read 17 books. 2 of them are DNF. I did not finish them because I just couldn't get myself to go through this. It was just too much. I did participate in one readathon, which was about books that were under 200 pages, so that did help increase the number quite a bit. So let's do this. By the way, I'm hoping the lighting is not too bad because it is completely dark outside, so I'm just using artificial lighting, so I'm hoping it's okay. So I'm just gonna grab them randomly and talk about them. So the first one I want to talk about is The Winner's Crime by Rutkoski, which I finished last month, The Winner's Curse, and this is the second book in the trilogy. I give this book a 5 stars. It was the second one after The Winner's Curse, and I just adored it. There was a lot of like struggle, a lot of political intrigues, which I did really enjoy. There is a strong romance in there, and even then I still liked it, even though it's not my cup of tea, but really enjoyed this. If you read The Winner's Curse, I highly recommend you continue the series, and I did end up finishing the whole series actually yesterday. I just couldn't help myself. I needed to finish the trilogy ASAP because second book in those type of like romance books just makes you like die a little bit inside, and you just need to know what's gonna happen and how it's gonna end. So I did finish. I read also The Winner's Kiss. I liked it. I give it a 4 star. I think in the 3 books it's my least favorite one, which still enjoyed it. I do think most people will be very satisfied with the ending. Some parts of the books I just wasn't in love as much as the other ones, but overall I did really enjoy this book and really happy to have finished the trilogy. Right at the beginning of the month, I was actually finishing a readathon, which actually I should mention these first, which were part of the Pokemon readathon that I did mostly last month and finished this month. The first book I finished was Wonder by RJ Palacio, which this book made me feel like an ass because I didn't love it. I gave it a 3 stars, I believe, and you're following a kid named August who has a face deformity. He's born that way, and I enjoyed a lot of it, but the ending was just too like rosy for me. It just didn't feel realistic whatsoever with the rest of the content, but I know a lot of people like this. Maybe don't take my advice. It is a middle grade book, so obviously it's more to help kids like discover a little bit of empathy, but meh. The last book I finished in that readathon was Station 11 by Emily St. Mandel, which I actually increased the rating. At first I was giving it a 3.5, but I'm totally giving it a 4 stars now. I don't know why. Sometimes you change your mind about books. So this one is definitely one of them. I really like it. It's been in my mind ever since I finished this. You're basically following a few different storyline of people after basically the end of the world, in the sense that there was just some type of flu that just ended up killing like 99% of people. So it's definitely interesting. You go back and forth in the past. You're just wondering how these people are linked, and definitely recommend it. This will really stick with you. I've been thinking about it a lot. So another book that I was trying to read as I was finishing these ones, and literally 3 days in a row I was trying to read this book, which to me 3 days is enough to read like a big book. Not the case there. So I DNF The Uglies by Scott Westerfeld at 112 pages. I just could not do it. 3 days in a row I was trying to read it. 3 days in a row I got a migraine every single time. I'm not saying the migraine is coming from this book. It just probably is just a bad coincidence, but I just couldn't make myself read this book. You're following basically a dystopian society where people are turned pretty at 16, and I get that, you know, beginning the book, the character has to be somewhat into that and then eventually grow out of it or something, but I just couldn't hear her tell me one more time how she's just part of the ugly and how she can't wait to be one of the pretties. I just couldn't do it. And I know that even if I did finish it, I would probably not give it more than a 3 stars. So I feel like it's just a waste of time. It's so weird because I never DNF books, but I did it twice this month. But yeah, I just couldn't do it. Let me know if you have read this and if you think I should finish it because it's awesome, but it's not happening. I'm gonna quickly go through the books that I read for the readathon with the books that are under 200 pages because I did talk about them in that wrap up, so I will link that down below. But I did read A Night by Elie is it Wiesel? You're basically, it's actually a non-fiction. You're following his story when he was part of a concentration camp, which is absolutely heartbreaking. I believe I gave it a 5 stars, which I'm really uncomfortable giving like ratings to books that are like biography, so I don't know. Give it a 5 stars. I think it's a really, really good book. It's tiny. It's like 115 pages, so I do recommend it if you're interested. Second book, I know some people loved it, some people hate it. I kind of loved it. It was The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn, which is the author of Gone Girl, which this book is 62 pages, which in my head, if it was 200 pages, I would probably have given it a 5 stars. But I gave it a 4 stars simply because I felt a little bit incomplete. I kind of don't like endings that are like, you decide what happens, what is the truth. I don't like that. I want you to tell me what's happening. At least most of the time, it's how I feel. So this one is basically like that. I don't recommend it for kids whatsoever because you're basically following a girl that gives hand jobs, at least at the beginning of the book. So I liked it. I gave it a 4 stars, and I forced a few people to read it around me because, first off, 62 pages, you can do this. But it's also because I felt the need to talk about it afterwards because I was just not satisfied with it, and it's kind of weird, and some people will hate it. I kind of loved it. So then I read Witches of Lynchford by Cornell, which I just realized that I believe it's going to be a trilogy, so I kind of want to read the second book. I gave it, I believe it 3.5 stars out of 5. I did enjoy it. You're basically following 3 different people, an old witch, which I want to know more about her. So if the second book is about that, I'm going to be reading it. And you're following the owner of a witch shop and finally a minister. So very different perspective. They're basically fighting the evil to a certain extent. Again, really short book. It was like 172 pages or something. It was good. I enjoyed it. But like I said, I would have preferred learning more about the old witch because they're just little glimpses in the books, and I was like, I want to read about that, not what's going on right now. So enjoyed it. More curious about other characters than the ones that were basically the main one in this book. Then I read Cake Face by Hallow Miller, which I had a whole rant about in the vlog where I was wrapping up. This book is about a girl that becomes huge overnight as a beauty guru, and if you don't know, I do have a main channel where I do talk about makeup and all that good stuff. And I was just not okay with certain things that were said about beauty gurus, and I understand it's obviously a fiction, but I did feel like they were, I do feel like a lot of stereotypes were like pushed in the face. So if someone reads this and think that's how it is, I kind of disagree. I just decided not to give it a rating. Then I read Living Dead Girl by Elizabeth Scott, which that was the first book I read in that readathon, and I was just like shocked. I forgot what this book was about when I was reading it, and whoa, I did not expect this. So you're basically following a girl after she's been kidnapped and stuck with her kidnapper and basically a pedophile for a few years. And it's really, 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 really shocking. I believe I gave it a 3.5 stars too. It has 170 pages. It's really, really easy to read and fast. Don't recommend it again if you're younger, but if you want to read about this, it's definitely shocking. I also read Wolf in the White Van by Darnielle, which I feel like a lot of people like this book, and I really did not like it. I DNF'd it at 50 pages. Yeah, at 50 pages, I just couldn't do it. It was really, really boring to me. I just didn't like the style of writing. I think that was my main issue. It has 200 pages, so most people could finish it. I don't know. I just couldn't do it. You're basically following a guy. I believe he did it to himself, but he has like a scar on his face or something, and he basically created a game, and people like pay a little bit of money every month to just have a few moves and everything, and that's basically all that happened in 50 pages, and I just, no. So again, let me know if you have read this book and if it gets a million times better, but otherwise, no. The last book I read in that readathon was The Lathe of Evan by Ursula Guin, and you're basically following a guy. Actually, this one I did like. I gave it a 4 stars, I believe. And you're basically following a guy that realized that some of his dreams are effective, so in the sense that they change reality. And his psychiatrist kind of decides to like improve the world that way. So you're basically following this. It is a little bit like on the philosophy side, but overall I still really, really enjoyed it. And I think it's an interesting read if you're into the whole like, maybe we shouldn't control the whole existence. I started rereading Harry Potter, and it's my first time reading them in English, so a lot of people were wondering like how I would feel, like did I feel differently about them. Obviously still 5 stars, but I do have to admit it was very different because very different very different than in French because I feel like I get a little less the feeling of like, you know, home feeling that you get whenever you reread Harry Potter. So I'm gonna obviously continue. The first couple books are not my favorite ones, so I do obviously enjoy them. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But it was strange for sure, but obviously 5 stars. I read the second book in the Mortal Instruments series. This one is City of Ashes, and obviously by Cassandra Clare. I liked it better than the first book because the first book I gave it a 3.5. This one I gave it a 4 stars. I'm still not over the moon about the series. I know a lot of people like absolutely adore them and makes me feel bad for not loving them, but I liked it better than the first one, so we're gonna leave it at that for now. I then read Everything by Nicola Yoon, and this is the type of book that I felt bad for not loving because it seems like on BookTube, like everyone loves this. You're basically following a girl that is allergic to everything, and cute boy moves in next door and her life changes. And am I the only one? I'm kind of sick of the whole premise of the girl having, actually virginal girl having a guy change her life forever. That kind of, no, it doesn't sit really well with me anymore. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting too old for this type of books, but I just was in love with that. And I don't know if I'm too cynical, but I kind of knew what was going to happen. So yeah, I gave it at first a 3.5 and then reduced it at a 3, and I kind of feel like putting it at 2. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with this. I do think a lot of girls would enjoy it if you're into those slight, fluffy YA romance books. I think I'm just not the type of person that will enjoy them, and I don't know, basically I feel like an old grumpy biatch to not like this. Obviously, don't do it on purpose, right? Then I read The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness, and I loved the premise of this book. You're basically following the rest of the people while something happens to like the chosen one. You know, all the other books, whenever it's like, oh, you're that one special person that's gonna prevent the world from like exploding. Well, you're basically following the rest of the people while the rest is happening. But I loved it because in the first part of each chapter, you would have this tiny paragraph letting you know what happens to the special chosen one. And then the rest of the chapter would be about the other people. And not surprisingly, actually, the rest of the people kind of live pretty boring lives. So I did enjoy it. I gave it a 3.5, but it wasn't super exciting, like I said, because clearly normal people have pretty boring lives. But enjoyed the premise, enjoyed it for what it was, and yeah, 3.5, solid 3.5, enjoyed it. I kept the best for last because this book, I am completely in love, solid 5 out of 5. I highly recommend everyone to read this, and it is The Gathering of Shadow by Schwab, which is the second book, the first one being A Darker Shade of Magic. And if you haven't read it, the first one I did enjoy, but obviously this type of like high fantasy books, the first books are usually just to like establish the foundation of the story, but the second book, oh my god, so good. There's like 500 pages, like this is a huge book, but I like how the chapters are really short, so you can like keep going, you keep saying, oh, just one more chapter, and then you end up reading the whole book, maybe not in one sitting. But this was fantastic, adored it. I don't want to say any spoiler, but the first book you're basically following two main characters, one of them being a magician that travels between different Londons. Some of them have magic, some of them don't. And then you're also following another character who wants to become a pirate. And in the second book, this is the second book. In this one, you're basically, something that isn't a spoiler whatsoever, you're basically following a tournament of magician. So if that does not interest you, don't read it, but otherwise you need to read this. It was absolutely awesome. I can't wait for the third book. It's coming out in February, I believe, and I'm already sad about it, but I'm making everyone read this. If you were interested about this series, go run and buy it. You will love this. So those are the 17 books that I've read this month. I'm really proud of myself, even though 2 of them were DNFs. I think I've read some pretty good books, and I'm really excited because October is going to be absolutely awesome. So that's it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss any future videos, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.